I'd like to welcome everyone to the called meeting of the EDA. Mr. Moore, if you would take our roll, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Hines.
Yes.
Ms. Jiggets.
Yes.
Mr. Kelly. Ms. Link. Ms. Revel.
Yes.
Mr. Scott.
Present.
And Mr. Thompson.
Excuse me, and will you notate Commissioner Kelly as an excused absent because he just became another father again.
I was actually going to mention those, Kelly regarding new father, and then also Commissioner Vice Chairman Thompson has a medical issue as well, just for the record. Okay. Before you, we have the minutes of a called meeting of the EDA, February 23rd. Accept the motion for approval of those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, right. We have a first, second. Mr. Moore, will you call the roll?
Mr. Hines.
Yes.
Ms. Jiggets.
Yes.
Ms. Revel. Mr. Scott.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Also, we have a minutes of an EDA, a retreat with City Council, March the 10th. We'll take a roll call on that. First.
Do we need a
You need a motion, right?
Motion, I'm sorry. We have a motion.
Move to accept those minutes.
Second.
got it?
Move. Second.
And Mr. Hines.
Yes.
Ms. Jiggets.
Yes.
Ms. Revel.
Yes.
Mr. Scott.
Yes.
All right. Motion carries.
Sounds good. We also do have a quick EDA retreat report. Naturally, most of the people sitting at this table were at that meeting, so I'm not going to rehash that but so much. Does anybody, basically, long story short, we did do some changes to our facade improvement grant and local incentives program. Staff, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I just think that the meeting went very well. The retreat was well attended. I think we got some good work done, and we have a good direction going forward from staff. So,
Sounds good. Any commissioners like to add anything for that? Sounds good. All right. Our next item, actually, I think our city manager did want to do a quick introduction as
Yes,
well. I'd like to fit that in real quick. And
Yes, members of the EDA, I'd like to introduce Mrs. Ann Seward, who is our interim Chief Financial Officer. Many of you have already been introduced to her, and we were trying to figure out, have you been here? Then we concluded, no, she had not. But Mrs. Seward comes to us with just a wealth of experience, over 29 years in municipal finance. She has served as the CFO of the City of Suffolk. She has served as CFO of Isle of Wight. She's been county administrator for Isle of Wight, and she is highly recognized nationally for her expertise in municipal finance. So we are advertising for a new CFO. Mrs. Seward does not want to remain in a full-time capacity, and clearly says, I am retired and I will do things in municipal government as I so desire. But we are very, very fortunate in this interim period to have her on our team. So we'd like to welcome her.
Good to be with you. Yeah.
we certainly welcome your presence here, and having dealt with you in past experiences, though we're in very good hands.
Right, you were in Suffolk.
I was in Isle of Wight.
Oh, you were in Isle of Wight.
Yes, she was county administrator. She did a fine job there in Isle of Wight. So
Thank you. Thank you.
very welcome. All right, we actually do have a need to remove or replace some of the items on our agenda. So naturally, there's a couple of moving items here. So the chair is going to entertain a motion for us to move item 8, the closed meeting, to be placed prior to item 4. The old 8 will be the new 4. And then the second item of agenda item 4, the proposed fiscal year 19 budget, to be moved to the third item of item 6. So that would be 8 becoming the new 4, and the second item of 4 becoming the third item of 6. Any questions about that maneuver?
No, can we
wanna
also
have
correct the agenda to March 20th and not the 27th?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So those 3 items of the agenda being amended. Chair would entertain a motion to make those moves.
I move to amend the agenda as stated.
We have a
Second.
first
Second.
and a second.
We have to come back.
Attorney, or we?
No, doesn't require.
Just consent, right? Okay. And then we just have,
We in order?
yeah.
Okay. We have a first and a second. Mr. Moore, will you please call the roll on that movement of the
You're saying
agenda?
there's no
We don't have to
We
move.
do not need to.
no motion required?
Need, okay. Okay. Sounds good. Then we'll need to move into closed meeting. All right. Whereas the Virginia Freedom of Information Act provides that the Board of Commissioners may hold closed meetings for certain purposes set forth in paragraph 2.2-3711A of the Code of Virginia of 1950 as amended, and whereas in compliance with the requirements of the code, the topics to be discussed are set forth below, and the subparagraphs of paragraph 2.2-3711A authorizing discussion of the topics in closed session are set forth in parentheses after each topic. Now therefore be resolved that the Board of Commissioners shall meet in closed meeting for the purpose of consultation with legal counsel regarding to actual or probable litigation where such consultation or briefing in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body, the Commons at Portsmouth Center, for the purpose of discussing disposition of publicly held real property interest where discussion in open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body, the 1500 block of High Street, and for the purpose of discussion or consideration of the investment of public funds where competition or bargaining is involved, where if made public initially, the financial interest of the governmental unit would be adversely affected. Office/office space. Motion? Is there a second?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
All right.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
for the benefit of the commission, we will come out and certify each element as it goes forward. So you all will have an opportunity to certify on each particular matter.
So when you say that, you mean that we'll do it for the first point that he raised, then the
Correct.
second one, and then the third one?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you for that clarity.
So for the vote, Mr. Hines,
Yes.
Ms. Jiggets,
Yes.
Ms. Revel,
Yes.
and Mr. Scott. Yes. Motion carries. We're in closed session. We're in closed session, and those 3 items are certified.
All right, I know we've done this once before today, but in the interest of time for one of our presenters, I would like the commission to possibly entertain an additional agenda move. The item 6, new business, Ports Events grant request. We have a visitor here to discuss that request, and the interest of his time being very valuable, I'd like for us to consider
Please.
a motion agenda. I move. We have a vote.
Move
We
to
agree?
amend.
Second, and we're all agreeing. Okay. With that, staff and Mr. Comer would be next item there.
Turn it over to Mr. Comer.
Thank you very much. That's the first raise I've had in a long time. I'm Don Comer. For those of you who have not met me before, I think I've met most of you this morning at least. And on behalf of the Portsmouth Partnership, I want to thank you folks all for giving us time to be with you this morning. The Portsmouth Partnership created the Ports Events 501c3 organization in 2009. And this was in response to the city's closing of the Convention and Visitors Bureau in 2008 due to budget constraints. With the addition of the Pavilion concert venue here, the Renaissance Hotel, the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame, the Virginia Children's Museum, significant assets like that had just come to Old Town. Our board members and folks in Old Town were all very concerned that other lights could perhaps go out in Old Town up and down High Street. So we took it upon ourselves to try to find ways to get feet on the street in Portsmouth. We stumbled around to find our way early on, 2009 through the current date. But early on, we ran radio advertisements, we ran advertisements in the newspaper. We held 3 restaurant weeks, we did 2 pub crawls. We organized 2 Schooner Days events around the Great Chesapeake Bay, down the bay, schooner race when the boats all tied up here at the foot of High Street. And we brought reenactors in for that, boat builders, lots of things to bring families and kids to Old Town. We also did Opsail. We brought Opsail to Portsmouth in 2012. And along our waterfront, we brought not only the Coast Guard ship, the Mayan, but the Bounty, the Gazella, and the Kalmar Nickel. They teamed up with schools, elementary schools, who had an adopt-a-ship program with Opsail. So we got elementary school kids out on the boats, and they learned about rope handling and navigation and the laws of physics on a wind-driven sailboat. But over time, these things are very expensive, and we've raised over $300,000 in sponsorship over the years and just worn out our sponsors and worn out a lot of volunteers as well. But since our end aim was to bring people to Old Town Portsmouth and get feet on the street, we have found that the 2 most successful events have been the regular self-promoting events, namely the Farmers Market and our First Friday concert series. The First Friday concert series is held at PAC at the intersection of Court and High Streets. Ideal location because it's fenced in, so for the ABC laws, we're in compliance with that. In the event of inclement weather, we can move any musical acts back inside the building. They don't have to be outside, but when they are outside, it's wonderful. And we bring families, we bring old and young to Old Town. The location is great because we're in the shade of the courthouse late in the afternoon. We have the live oak trees and the ivy and the brick courtyard. It's a wonderful environment. Beer and wine sales are handled by Portsmouth Museum Foundation volunteers, so it's very much a mutual effort that we have with others downtown. The contributions from beer and wine are donated to, the net proceeds are donated to the Museum Foundation, and they are in turn matched by the Business Consortium for the Arts. Is that what it's called? Kathy, I think it is. Business Consortium. So that's raised something on the order of $45,000 for the Museum Foundation since we've begun the program. The Farmers Market has been a huge hit. It brings lots of people downtown. We've been running the Farmers Market from roughly the end of April through Christmas because we have not only food vendors, but we have craft people, we have soap and scent people, we have woodworkers, and they have seasonal greenery that they'll sell around the Thanksgiving and Christmas time as well. So they continue to come to the market right up through Christmas. We have, however, recently added Momac Brewing in Churchton as a winter home for the farmers market. So that's been held every Saturday there. It'll remain there through April. It's been so successful, 2 vendors who have been kind of knocking on Terry Danaher's door about joining the farmers market have come on since we've moved to Momac. So it's great to keep the vendors' business interests alive for 12 months out of the year rather than just 8. So in whittling down to 2 events that have been very successful for us, I think 17,500 people through last year had come to the First Friday events. So it's made money for the Museum Foundation. It's brought people to downtown Portsmouth. It has united our efforts with the Museum Foundation volunteers, and it's brought, really, it's incubated small businesses through the farmers market downtown as well. But we have whittled our expense nut down to about $15,000 a year. We have not asked for a grant. There was a question, I think, from Councilwoman Simmons last time about the period of time it's been since we asked for money. We have not asked for a grant since 2014. We've tried to be good stewards of the money and the funding that we receive from folks like you. Our 3 biggest, most consistent sponsors over the years, which we very much appreciate, have been the Housing Authority, Town Bank, and the EDA. So what we've done, since we've not asked for any money since 2014, we're going to try not to ask for any more money for the next 2 years. So we've gone to Town Bank, we've gone to the Housing Authority, and we're coming to you folks as well, requesting a $10,000 grant each. That'll give us a total of $30,000 for 2 years with a budget of $15,000 a year. That pays for music, it pays for insurance, It handles all the ancillaries. There's no payroll that comes out of our sponsors' money. It's all volunteer. And hopefully that'll take us for the next 2 years or perhaps beyond. So we don't know if you guys can do, can commit a next year's budget to a $5,000 grant. If you need to make that a $10,000 grant this year, that's fine with us. That'll work. But just to let you know, the Housing Authority and Town Bank have both signed on to having a second year next year of support. So 2 $5,000 grants for them. Trying to give you the brief elevator speech as best I can because I know you've had a long morning. Any questions anyone has? I'd be happy to answer them.
I have a question because
Yes,
you
ma'am.
were before this authority, was it last month?
Yes, ma'am.
And was it a different request that you were asking in?
No, it was the same request. I think they just asked that we move it to today because you had a retreat that day. I know you had a bus tour and
It was a retreat.
But I mean, the
to-
amounts were, because I think,
the amount's the same. Yes, ma'am.
no, because I remember us talking about 5,000, that's.
Right, we're
okay.
thinking about 5,000 each year.
Each year for 2 years. Total.
Right,
Total.
right, because that's how we've, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I think the concern from my perspective on this, well, thank you, I don't have any questions for you. I think the concern that from my perspective, though, was as a member who'd been on this board for almost 4 years at the time now, never saw the requests come, so naturally, as commissioners come on and off, if we go multi-year, then we lose, as people move on and off the commission, we lose some of that institutional knowledge. So I think doing, 1 year, 5,000 a year
Yeah, that's how we factored it in.
is probably the more appropriate way. So that way
Yes.
each year we can kind of,
Absolutely.
have that knowledge that each person,
Absolutely.
as this body is pretty fluid, in the last year, I think we've had 4 changeovers on this particular body. So I think that would be probably more appropriate, but I mean, I don't think it'd be a problem to commit.
We're talking about $5,000 per year for 2 years?
Yeah.
So you think a 2-year commitment is too long?
No. I'm not saying that. I just think we funded 5,000 each year.
Right.
We give a 2-year commitment. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I just think we funded 5,000
Right,
each
and
year
we're
over the
not,
2-year
we
span.
shouldn't.
Two different budgets.
We shouldn't lock ourselves in and say 2 years. We have included 5,000 in our proposed budget for FY19 for the EDA that we'll talk about whenever you get to that part.
Yeah.
on our,
I mean,
Well, I think that's exactly what I'm saying there.
Yeah.
That you're not committing to 10,000, you're only committing to 5,000.
to 5 for this FY19
do you
budget.
have, I mean, just for this.
I think, I don't see that being significant enough to not commit to 10,000 for 2 years. 5,000 per year.
We can commit, we can actually have that discussion with our budget, but
Yeah,
you're feeling that,
yeah.
of
If
a
that's-
10,000 and them come back in 2 years' time?
Yeah,
Okay.
if that's what they, yeah, and then at that point, you still have some institutional knowledge and people.
Well, I'm
understand
concerned, I was
what
going to say, I'm more
we do.
concerned about the
Yeah,
institutional
the 2
knowledge.
years, people would still know that, what it was about. They can come in and Mr. Comer or whoever his predecessor is can give the same information or better and tell us kind of what happened and how successful they were with the usage of those dollars. I feel comfortable committing to $10,000 for over a 2-year
I'm
period.
honestly, either way, I just think that we need to make sure we have to have.
I just don't want them to have to come back next year and just get another 5,000. I prefer they come back every 2 years or more,
But
depending
we'll
on
have
that.
to, the budget
We can
comes into
just make
play,
an
the
adjustment.
proposed, we'll get into that.
Yeah.
And then we can vote. But we have already factored in 5,000, and then once you're actually discussing it,
So
then the commission can vote.
what's required right now? Is there a motion?
We actually, we're scheduled for a vote on this to say that we will accept the grant. Well, maybe the motion would be that we accept, we're going to give them a grant with an amount to be determined at our budget discussion. Would that be appropriate, attorneys?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, what was the last?
We are scheduled for a vote on this particular item.
Yes.
It seems as if we want to have
Because
further
this is
discussion
the
at the time we do our budget discussion. So would it be appropriate for us to either get to a consensus right now and amend our proposed budget? Or would it be more appropriate for us to say, yes, we're going to give a grant with a dollar amount to be determined?
Well, the budget, would it require an amendment?
Well, we
Of the
haven't
proposed,
adopted it yet.
but we haven't adopted yet.
We haven't adopted yet. We're still in discussion phase. Once we get there, we haven't even,
But
you know,
you're still
once we-
talking 5,000 a year, right?
We're
5,000 a
talking
year, but
we put 5 in, but
Five in the
Commissioner
current
Scott is saying,
No, I'm saying the vote to approve two $5,000 grants for fiscal year 19 and fiscal year 20. Is that what I'm hearing?
is that an emotion?
well, we,
That is a motion.
All right, we have a motion on the floor.
Second.
And a second.
All right, Mr. Hines,
Yes.
Ms. Jiggets,
no.
Ms. Revel,
Yes.
Mr. Scott.
Yes.
And
It
that
passes
is a pass. Okay.
3-1.
And let me just say, my only concern is this: very rarely do you see forward 2 years for a budget FY. We'll deal with the proposed for FY19, and then when FY20 will come around to do a budget, we will take care of it then. You don't normally see locked in like that, and so that's my only
I
concern.
completely understand that. So what we'll do is the commissions will, it seems like, we will fund the $10,000 in this fiscal year and not have a grant from Ports Events for the
Yeah, grants.
fiscal year 20.
Grants work a little bit differently.
So, right, it's not really an operating expense per se. It becomes a granted item. And I understand what you're saying too, because, you know.
Well, then let me get clarification. Are you considering this part of the LIP?
No. Well, we could possibly have that discussion when we talk
Okay, once we
about
get
the
to the
budget.
proposal.
Let's talk about the
Okay.
budget. but
Okay, let's
The
get
mechanics
there.
of giving the $10,000 to Mr. Comer it can still be adjusted in our budget discussion we're going to have.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yes. All right. So let's get back now. Okay, so we're going to circle.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, and I don't want to, I just asked this question, understanding what other matters we have pending, and given the time period. I did not I wanted to make sure if the commission had any other questions for the Page Healthcare folks before they depart. If there are none, then I think we'd like to excuse them unless you all think you're going to have a question for public consumption at the end of this, at the end of the meeting where you have this matter for 1500 scheduled. And I just say that because I didn't want them to leave and someone then have a question for them.
We do have two possibly longer discussions.
And I'm sure the
that are-
budget could be probably a little extensive.
Mr. Scott.
May I make a motion to amend the agenda again to move that matter up for a vote now while they're here, in case we do have any questions?
We have a motion for the moving of option.
And I
item number
apologize.
At the very bottom of the agenda.
But I you know.
They would be here to the end of the meeting to
Right.
wait. I'm sure they want to know what the
So
outcome
we're
of the
moving
vote
item number 9 to item, we're just above 5 at this point, which now becomes, item 6, I would assume, the new
is.
6.
Spend some time on this agenda.
Okay.
And
Do we
is
have
it-
a consensus of the group to do such action?
Well, before you say that, is it 1,500 or 1,541?
It's the 1,500 block.
Of High Street,
But the actual address
1541.
is 1541. 1541.
Correct.
There are actual multiple addresses that haven't
It's
been
multiple,
subdivided yet.
from 1,500 through 15, how does that work?
It's just a number of 1,500 addresses. It hadn't been, they're going to be lot lines
But
vacated.
the purchase agreement is
Was it
for
4
15.
parcels at one point? I think it was. It was a number of parcels that made up that.
There are a number of different parcels. They still exist right now. They'll get vacated. Yeah.
Those will be vacated, and 1541 will be the address.
So those parcels are going to now become the new 1541.
Did I hear 9 parcels?
You said it was 9 parcels there.
PRJ, can you weigh in on this?
I'm not sure how many parcels, but it is a multiple parcel.
Okay.
Properties in there. But I'm sure they'll be vacated into one. One parcel.
And that's why they need the purchase agreement, so they can go ahead and
That's
take that.
correct, yes, sir. So we have a.
So in that order, I'd like to make a motion to enter the lot city.
So I just want to make sure we all had consensus about moving.
Said that.
We're good? Okay.
All right,
Now
motion.
you can go.
Motion, I'd like to make a motion to enter into a purchase agreement, purchase and sale agreement with 1541 High Street Partners, LLC,
Second.
for the conveyance and development of the 1500 block of High Street, for use as a community health center.
Okay.
Second.
First, second.
All right, Mr. Hines,
Yes.
Ms. Jiggets,
Yes.
Ms. Revel,
Yes.
Mr. Scott.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. We appreciate your investment in our city. Thank you.
No, you can't say goodbye. Thank you, board.
Thank you. Appreciate your.
Nice to meet you.
All right, so now I gotta get back to renumbering here.
I know you. I got so many. I got arrows going in all different kind of directions on this agenda.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, if I might, let me say publicly, I want to thank the authority for its flexibility. I'm sure Mr. Moore could say this, but I know he stepped out for a second. Mr. Moore, Mr. Miller, the chairman, of course, spent quite a bit of time trying to get all these issues lined up in advance to try to make this as streamlined as possible. Yeah. But sometimes we know things can be out of order. And let me also say on a budget day, I'm appreciative of all the staff, support staff, entertaining that flexibility. Because in our mind, this would have been a little smoother. But as I always say, like a boxer, you got to plan until you get hit with the first punch. So,
well, in the interest of people's times and having key people here to have the discussions we had to have, that was the main reason for most of the moving of the agenda. With that, I do need to ask my commissioners, do y'all need a few minutes for a restroom? This is longer than usual. Are we okay for restroom, water break, anything of that nature, or can we move forward? Do we need 5 minutes is what I'm asking. Okay, let's proceed then. All right, so I believe this is actually going to pick us back up at the February 2018 financials. With that, I'll turn it over to Lisa Blackburn.
Right, and I'll be very brief in the interest of time.
No, don't be too brief.
As at the 28th of February 2018, the total net position was $13,674,089.50. Total revenues for February was $10,591.35. Total expenditures was $18,906.57. This resulted in a net loss of $8,315.22. The total expenditures for development properties was $4,498.20. Cash and temporary investment balance was $1,842,947.06. Total grants available to be awarded, $234,930.99, and the ending pool cash balance was $33,296.23.
Commissioners, after the presentation, do we have any questions or concerns? For the record, I have spoke with Treasurer Kelly. He offered no comments on the financials. They seem to be in order, and as he said that he would, if he would be here, he would recommend approval. But I'd leave it open to adoption. Move for adoption.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right, Mr. Hines,
Yes.
Ms. Jiggets,
Yes.
Ms. Revel,
Yes.
Mr. Scott.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, that moves us into old business. And,
All right.
Mr. Moore, turn it over to you.
So very quickly, 2 items under old business. First, the State of the City is Friday, April 6th. The EDA has a table, and certainly we would like to hear as soon as possible.
What is the time?
It's 12 o'clock. 12 p.m. on the 6th. That is a Friday. So we need a head count because we are certainly inviting businesses as well. So we'd like to know by close of business on Friday whether or not you will be here, unless you can tell us now.
I have RSVP'd already. Anybody?
I think I did too.
I think I did. State of the City? Yeah, I think I always
Yeah, I'll be there.
I'll be there.
So the 4 that are present will be here, sir.
No problem. Thank you, and we'll look to hear from the other commissioners. Certainly, it's just as a reminder, it is a table that holds 10 individuals, and so you may have some other businesses there. PPIC also has a table as well. Our office, we purchased now 2 tables, again for staff and for businesses.
Have you received any RSVPs from the ones that we've given grants to? I think there was a discussion about that at our last meeting.
We have put that the request out there. We have not received any feedback from them as yet. We do have several businesses that have responded back, so
Okay.
we are looking forward to
Sounds good.
seeing those individuals.
Thank you.
Also, the PPIC meeting on Tuesday will be, it is not a joint meeting. It is just an opportunity for you all to attend as visitors. But we will have Mr. Joe Hines from Timmons, who does the VITA presentation. We think certainly that would be a good opportunity to take what we've done over the last few months with regards to the various retreats, as well as our new agenda and focus and strategic plan, and see how all that plays together with what the EDA and the PPIC will be doing going forward. So he will be here. That will be the gist of their meeting next week, but it is Tuesday morning at 8 a.m.
And for those that have not attended that presentation, it's a very good presentation. That we did. The group that went to VITA with me, Commissioner Scott, Commissioner Revel. I think it is a worthwhile presentation if you haven't been there before. So I would encourage those to.
They'll be here. Yes,
They'll be here.
It's their normal
in their normal
PPIC.
PPIC meeting.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Mr. Moore, for the update there. All right, leads us into our next item, which is the local incentives plan expansion. I believe we actually should be scheduled for a vote here because we did get to a consensus at our retreat. This would be probably the time for us to vote. Am I correct, Attorney Miller?
Well, I think that our thought was that the Economic Development Department would produce some maps. I think the first formal amendment was going to be expanding the boundary, and so there would be some actual maps produced that you would vote on at your next meeting.
Because I believe our consensus was that we would provide just the authority for the department to expand into Churchland and into the Victory area that was originally scheduled for January 2019, basically allowing them to accept applications. It may not have been the formal documents like we were talking about, pushing it off to, I believe, January for the formal documents and marketing materials and things of that nature to allow staff to do that. Would the staff need any sort of approval from this body for them to be able to accept those applications outside of the program as it's already specified? My understanding was that we needed to actually have some sort of action because we are bringing signs back in, which we want to start taking those applications
And where are we going to move that date
in
up to July?
July
Yes.
of 2018.
There was a split, right? July for some of the stuff and January 1 for the rest of the
Correct,
stuff.
yes, sir. I just want to make sure that we're responsive to, what this ad hoc committee did, but also responsive to the request from our council by their consensus.
Right. Yeah, I think that staff can begin accepting applications. I think that we ought to have you ought to be formally voting on something specific when we're talking about expanding the program. There's also no problem having a vote today to simply tell staff to start accepting applications, and then we can come back and follow up. But ultimately, we ought to be very specific about what the changes are to the rules of the program.
And instead of calling this July 2018, this is FY 2019.
That's correct.
Right.
FY 2019, that's correct,
Budget.
yes.
Yeah.
So, I'd like to make a motion that we formalize the action we took at the retreat to accept the amendments to the grant program effective with fiscal year 2019, contingent upon the receipt of the actual maps at the next meeting.
I check all the boxes for the attorneys here.
Yeah, that'll work. We
Okay.
can follow up with more additional votes when we actually have.
Is it just the maps?
The maps and any other guidelines that need to be adjusted.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Ms. Jiggets?
Yes.
Ms. Revel?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
All right. Moving on to our next item that was amended as the fiscal year 2019 budget. I'll turn it over to our ad hoc committee. Will be represented by Commissioner Jacobs.
Thank you. I'm not going to go line item for line item. I think what's most important is to touch on those things. And Lisa, please feel free to jump in. I want to first thank Lee Ogilvy from the Department of Economic Development. She was very helpful, as well as I want to thank Lisa also with this process. And if you would please first focus on line 2. You will see in FY 2018, we did not have any line item for sale of land, whereas for FY 2019, we have a proposed amount of $150,000. And we had the input from our Director of Development with that proposed item. To our Director, is that the amount that you still envision, the $150,000?
Those are the sale proceeds, $50,000 from 710,
Right.
$100,000 from the former library. I think the question still remains as to whether or not, for sure, how that $100,000, because it was a city property, but the question of, does it ultimately end up in the EDA's hands? That's a council and EDA question. But from this standpoint, it's in the proposed budget.
That's what I'm
as
saying,
well.
okay. Like I said, I'm only gonna focus on those things that are going to reflect a significant increase in our budget. The $125,000 from the Renaissance Hotel, that is still the consistent amount, but that is a pass-through amount. So the total that we'll be talking for operating revenue for the proposed FY 2019 budget is $275,600. Going to the expenses, for the cost of land sold, which is item number 11, $50,000 has been factored in there that has to do with the sale of the land. Under business development, line 14, we've increased that by $50,000, plus or minus $50,000. It was $1,400 in the FY 2018 budget. We've taken that up to $52,000. And the idea being that we as an EDA see ourselves as the vision of what the city of Portsmouth is desiring and what we as a commission are desiring. We want to increase our focus on business attraction, job creation, business retention, job retainment, as well as job expansion. And this is our forward commitment for that. So we've added $50,000 plus for that under the line 14. Under line 15, we show $20,000. That reflects the $5,000 for port events, as well as a discussion about the pavers that Commissioner Kelly has been very much involved in for the enhancement of this city's historical contributions.
Historic markers.
Yeah, you call them markers, yes, the historical markers. I call them pavers, but
Okay.
markers. Thank you for that correction. So that is something that we wanted to focus on.
Which line item was that, Commissioner Jacob?
That is line
15.
item 15.
Okay, got you.
But the significant one was line item 14.
Yeah, I saw it. I got it.
You with me?
I'm with you.
Okay. if you would turn over to the other page, because like I said, we're just gonna hit on those things that will jump out at you. Under contractual legal, in FY 2018, that was $75,000.
Which line item is that?
Line 30.
Okay. Thank you.
We're proposing to take that to $100,000.
Why?
That includes the property on Victory Boulevard.
The cost that's been, okay, gotcha. All right.
Okay. Okay.
Pitbull.
The line 32, under grounds maintenance, the indication is that that would be increasing. Lisa, would you speak to that? Under the grounds maintenance. We double it because if you will recall, there was discussion about properties
PRHA property?
transferring. Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes. And that speaks to that. So that you see is a almost doubling from the FY 2018.
Okay.
Utility expenses just having to do with
Stormwater, the stormwater fees.
stormwater fees
There is
going
a
up.
built-in 3% or 5% increase in stormwater fees for all the properties that currently have stormwater bills.
yes.
So that's kind of the,
So
Which line item was that? I'm sorry.
but the line item.
Which line item was that?
with the for the stormwater fees. Listen, I appreciate not having you all.
39.
33, line 33.
Thank you.
Okay, and let me say this, if you leave today and there are other things you want to factor in, just shoot us an email, Lisa or myself, or Aaron, and or Lee, and because the final vote will take place at the April meeting. So are there any questions?
What, I'm sure it's here, I just don't see it.
You need a large sheet like I have.
No, I can see it, but what I'm asking is, what's the year-over-year increase or decrease in the budget?
Well, I intentionally did not go into that part because as we've had our other discussions today, it's going to kick up. But at this moment, in FY 2018, the change in net was $190,857. Before we factor in all the discussion from today that we've had, the change, and that was a deficit, will be a deficit of $511,047. But we know that's going to go up, the net loss.
You saying
We're at line
Yeah.
60. You with me? Line
Yeah,
64.
I see that 511 number. What I'm asking, does that mean that, okay, I'm with you.
You with me? And so, because we had subsequent discussions today that will factor into that, when we have the recommended budget at the April meeting, that amount will change. It will still be a net loss. And obviously, we are excited about the idea of properties being sold. We're excited about the business recruitment, business attraction, as well as the business retention and expansion of jobs in the city. We have had to also keep in mind that staff is increasing. So that also factors into the way the numbers are looking for the FY 2019 budget. Any other questions?
Yeah, actually, I have just one question, just as
Okay.
a general comment or maybe a recommendation regarding while I'm supporting the business development $52,000 line item, I guess my question would be is, Has there been any discussion about how staff would access those dollar amounts? Is that going to be a item where we approve the line item and then staff brings each individual item over a certain dollar amount to access this budget, or is this going to be a dollar amount that's there that we're just going to allocate to in our budget to allow staff to use for business development opportunities and then report back to us on a monthly basis? Was there any vision on that?
We did have that discussion.
I just want to make sure,
Chairman,
we don't
we
necessarily
did.
have to discuss this right now, but I think it would be
Yes.
wise before we vote on this, that be hammered out before the commission votes.
You're absolutely correct. And we did have that discussion, and we talked about case-by-case basis proposals as it pertains to business recruitment travel. So certainly, that's an excellent question.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that whatever we go with, even though it's our budget, that it's been, vetted through staff, that it is not, overly intrusive to them to get those funds. So I just want to make sure we discuss that with them and make sure they're included in that. But overall, the budget.
Point well taken, and that's something that the commissioners can think about in preparing for the next meeting.
Yeah.
And hopefully the director can give us some guidance on what his thoughts are at the next meeting.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
pertain to that line item, how you like to see it. I mean, I'll just say right now on the record, I'd like to see you have as much flexibility with that as possible. And then if you screw it up, we'll take it back.
But no.
Well, let me just put you on the hot seat, because you love to put Commissioner Jiggis on the hot seat. Do you see that 50,000 as enough?
I see it as a good start. It's moving us in the right direction. I don't think it's enough, but I think it's a good start. But I'm hoping that our director will be able to leverage it and show us the return on that investment and how valuable it is, so that we'll be happy and eager to give him more.
I concur. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a very good starting point for us, since it's brand new to our budget. It's something it's a much needed investment. I just want to make sure that we're nimble enough to take advantage of those dollars, that he can be, and naturally he's going to be a good steward, I'm sure of it. So there's nothing, any indication in past that he hasn't been. So I just want to make sure we think about all the mechanics of that.
Absolutely.
That new line item.
Absolutely. And 1541 will be added into the development process.
One last comment as well regarding the line item, I believe it was 15, where we talked about the items that were
The economic development
the
grant?
grants for sports events and for the markers.
The markers.
I'd like for us to look at possibly some different maneuverings in our budget, if there's possibility to. We just voted to do $10,000 to the sports events all at one time. So while we revisit and massage these numbers over the next month, I'd like for us to look at increasing our contribution to the stone pavers, and make it I believe Commissioner Kelly and the Portsmouth Heritage Initiative had given us a dollar amount of about $75,000 to complete this. While I don't know if it's fiscally responsible for us to complete it in one fiscal year, I would like for us to think about increasing that number from the, I think you said programmed at 15,000. I would like to at least go 20,000.
Well, and actually,
Be a 3-year.
actually during the discussion, that's what I had recommended. So, Lisa, if you will reflect, we're going to do a 25 for the pavers, and then 10
for the ports events.
For the ports events. So that takes it from the 20 to 35,000.
Okay.
You with me? Gotcha. Okay.
Thank you.
We're going to do the 10, just so I'm clear, the 10 for the ports events all at one time?
We really shouldn't commit a 5,000 crossing
Going
budget
out.
years. The mechanics of this really should be that we're granting $10,000 in one shot, because, we don't know what our budget's going to look like. We just committed to Mr. Comer that we were going to give him $10,000, where we don't know what next year's budget's going to look like.
Yeah, that was my point.
It could be
Yeah.
due commissioners, it could be, new leadership, et cetera, I think we go ahead
But
and
he's
honor
not
our
eligible to
commitment.
come back still for 2 years.
That's correct. He said he asked for
Okay.
only a
Gotcha. I
2-year,
gotcha. Okay.
$5,000.
But if you-
Okay, I'm clear.
Yeah, and of course, you all are going to...
You were the one that actually made that motion.
Oh, I'm.
You're okay with that discussion?
I'm very comfortable with that discussion.
I'm just trying to have it clear in my mind. Thank you.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Because we'll have the April meeting to discuss it, but,
Yep.
so just to recap, we're taking that to 35,000.
Yes.
And
And
you made notation of that, and we're going to include the 1541 High Street as one of the development properties.
When you send out the budget prior to our meeting, if we have any questions, can we address staff directly with any individual questions that we may have?
I would encourage you to
Or go through?
Yeah, myself
the
or
ad
Aaron.
hoc,
Okay.
and maybe put a copy, if it's okay with the ad hoc, to put a
Sure,
copy to
to Lisa,
Lisa
sure.
Okay.
and her
That'll work.
team. That would probably be
Thank you.
the most
That would,
appropriate.
that would be the, since this is the EDA's budget,
Thank you.
that would be the way to do it. And of course, I didn't make mention of it because it wasn't a change, but the 300,000 is still in for the local incentive grant program. And we talked about that because recognizing that we will be adding areas. However, at this moment, going on past demand, for the time being, we're going to stay with the 300,000. And I think that summarizes. What we try to do is to be conservative with the revenues, realistic and forward-thinking with the expenses. Up until this point, we have not had to come back to do budget amendments with the EDA. I do believe that that will not be the case this time for FY 2019. There probably will be some budget amendments required due to the initiatives with the commercial property that would be coming over from PRHA.
I say a budget is a breathing, living document, so it
Yes,
does
it
change
is.
from
But
time
thank
to
you for your
time.
input.
Thank you very much. Our last item is commissioner comments. I'll start with Commissioner Scott.
I have no comments.
I have no comments whatsoever today.
I have none either.
Commissioner Revel. All right, and let's finish it up with our director.
Last thing we have is staff will be out of the office this afternoon. We will be returning on Friday. We are attending the ICSC, which is the International Convention of Shopping Centers, Mid-Atlantic showcase on tomorrow and Thursday. So we will be out of the office. Lee will be in the office certainly, but we will be available via email.
Where is it being held? In
National Harbor.
where?
National Harbor.
Okay.
All right, with that, we'll go ahead and close the meeting. Thank you very much for your time today.
Welcome.
Do you have fun at these meetings?